Wonderful. Dobrocheno da. Yadushi radi bututut zochodni swami. This worked so much better when I was practicing it. I hope I didn't mangle that too much. My name is Armін Brігель. I am a consulting engineer for Jamf for the EMEA region. That is Europe, Middle East, India. So mostly Europe, most of the work. You probably know me from my weblog Scripting OS 10, which I have been running for much longer than I have been at Jamf. I've been in some Mac admin related work for the past 30 years or so. Today, I want to talk about patch management, some best practices. This will be very much from the Jamf perspective, but a lot of the things that I say will work with other management systems as well. I will point that out at some places. So yes, I work for Jamf, very much oriented towards Jamf, but not all of what I say is just for Jamf. I hope that we have a lot of information that is for Mac management in general. We will talk about what is patch management. Why do we even want to or have to do this? Should be fairly obvious, but needs some covering. I will talk about some of the software that is available within Jamf and outside of Jamf, or in addition to Jamf. Some great open source solutions that are available in this area. And also towards the end, most of this will be about application patching, but we will also talk about macOS patching, which is a bit of a special case, obviously, if you want to update the entire system. So just to get the wording right, patch management is the process of distributing and applying updates to software. Obviously, software has a lot of updates all the time. And in the last few years, as the internet has become more and more prominent and available everywhere, software vendors, whether they build operating systems or applications or just plugins and things like that, have relied on that more and more, considering, hey, the users are online all the time. They can download and update everything. We will just push out updates more and more regularly. It used to be that we might get updates once or twice a year, and now we're on a monthly or 6 to 8 weeks basis for most updates. Obviously, for the users, the most interesting part about an update might be they get features. In the fall, Apple usually adds a whole bunch of new emojis to the operating system, both macOS and iOS, and that is a huge driver for people to actually not just dismiss that software update notification, but say, hey, yeah, I want that. I don't want my emojis to just look like small rectangles. Yeah, and we're preparing for that right now. At Developers Conference last month in June, this month, a few weeks ago, Apple introduced macOS Ventura and iOS 16 and iPadOS 16 and all the others that go with that. And of course, on their website, they have all these lists of new features and enhancements and everything. But the interesting thing for us as admin, and the really important thing for organizations, is the security aspect, the CVEs, the vulnerabilities that are in a piece of software and that will be fixed with any release. Just last year alone, in 2021, Google Chrome, just as an example, I don't want to shame them. They fixed more than 300 CVEs. Don't want to shame them that way. Every piece of software has a lot of security issues, and web browsers especially, because the way they're exposed to the web, they run the web. So you want to have these security fixes in your system to be secure, to be as safe as you can be. Because as soon as these CVEs are known, obviously people can exploit those CVEs. So you want to be on a version of the software that goes beyond. CVEs don't just fix security holes, they might, under certain circumstances, change behavior. One example that is recently is there's a CVE in the Active Directory server that might actually affect how Mac clients and other third-party clients bind to Active Directory servers, if you still bind to Active Directory servers. And of course, Apple isn't immune to this. Apple has their own list of security updates and their own list of CVEs that they fix with every release. And there's a wonderful Apple support page where they document at least most of these. So now that we know why we want to do it and why it is important to do it, and it's not just because of the emojis, it's for the security mainly, how do we go about this? What is the workflow? And there is a standard installation cycle, and I'll break that down. And again, I'll use the example of Google Chrome. I like using web browsers as examples for this, and I'm not the only one, because web browsers update very frequently, and they are very, very important for a workflow. First step is you go to the vendor's website and download the installer. On the Mac, many installers come as DMGs, which contain an app that you then drag to the application, or the user drags it to the applications folder. Unfortunately, many management systems, including Jamf Pro, don't understand and know how to work with DMGs right away out of the box. So we have some extra work to do. That extra work is the repackaging. So we extract the application out of the DMG, and it might also be a zip or some other archive. And we repackage it into a package file format. The package is the Apple installation file format, the installer, which you've certainly encountered a lot. Then we upload that package into Jamf. We configure the policies into Jamf, and then again, please replace your management system with Jamf. You upload it, you configure how this is going to be distributed and to which clients it's going to be distributed. And then the management system takes over, in this case, Jamf, and it pushes out that package on the schedule that you gave it to all the clients and installs the software. Straightforward enough, but there's lots of steps. And obviously we get updates every few weeks. Sometimes we get these minor panic updates just a week or two after release. So we get these updates very frequently. And this is extra work that we have to do every time. Jamf Pro helps with that. Jamf Pro has patch management built in. That means that Jamf Pro gets its own list for certain pieces of software, and Jamf Pro knows approximately about 1,000 pieces of software here. What is the newest version? When was it released? And it can report which of your clients are on the latest version, or maybe on an older version, or which version they are. And you can see that in dashboards, and we can make that visible. That's the patch reporting. And another part of this is the actual patch management. So when you upload a package into Jamf Pro, you can tell Jamf Pro, this is this version of the software. You can associate it with the patch reporting. And then Jamf will know, I need to install this for the client to be up to date if they aren't up to date. And you can schedule the policies and all of that. This is the interface, how it looks in Jamf Pro. You get the list, and you can attach that with certain packages to update and install. So this is a tedious process. It would be great if we could automate that in some ways. And I will show 3 ways today in which we can automate this process. The first one is an amazing open source tool. It's been around since about 2011, 2010, and it's called Autopackage. Autopackage is mostly a command line tool written in Python, but it comes with its own Python nowadays. You don't have to worry about all the Python drama that went on in macOS in the last few months. That automates this initial process, the downloading, repackaging, and even the uploading to your management system and configuring the management system can all fully be automated with Autopackage. It used to be that for Jamf in particular, there was a processor or a plugin in auto package that was called JSS importer. And if you are still using that, I need to point out that the JSS importer was deprecated, end of life, just a few weeks ago. There is a successor, it's called Jamf Upload. And that is now the way to connect auto package workflows to your Jamf instance. Jamf Upload uses a lot more modern interfaces, and it can do all the work that JSS importer used to do and more. So if you are already using auto package and are still using JSS importer, keep in mind that you want to move to the new one. Jamf Upload, as soon as possible, you want to look into that. Other than that, auto package automates all the steps except for the deployment. And because deployment is part of the job of your management system, but auto package will download, extract, repackage, upload, and configure your management system. And once the management is configured, system is configured, it will just push out the software to wherever you need it to be. It's Python script. It's mostly command line based, which is a bit of a challenge for many people. And to unlock the full features of auto package, you will need to use the command line. But maybe you don't need to do that. There is a UI tool. It's called Auto Packager with the R at the end. Lots of confusion there. I think it's a funny name, but there's confusion because Auto Packager is a separate thing from Auto Package. Auto Packager is a UI on top of Auto Package, so it requires Auto Package to run in the background, but it actually provides a nice UI to install the latest version of the command line tool and all the other tools you might want to associate with that. It also has ways of scheduling auto package runs. So you can automatically check once a day or twice a day or once a week, whatever works in your schedule. So if you're not comfortable with the command line, look at Auto Packager. It will help you use auto package. You don't get the full feature set. The command line is more powerful and has more features, but it simplifies things a lot. And I had a discussion a few weeks ago. We were putting together these slides for the Jamf Nation live events we had in London, Amsterdam, Paris, and Munich. And I was talking with a colleague and said, yeah, I wouldn't recommend Auto Packager because it hasn't been updated in like 18 months. And then I was wrong because pretty much the day after I said that, there actually was a new update that works with the new Jamf Upload plugin processor. And so, yeah, just got an update, brand new. I really like that. So auto package is one way to automate at least a major part of the installation cycle, but there are other approaches that go very, very differently. And another one is Installamator. And this is the somewhat shameless self-promotion part because Installamator is a project that I started. I built that script 2 years ago before I was at Jamf. The amazing thing about Installamator is how much it has taken off and been adopted. I am not the only maintainer of the project anymore. There are 4 maintainers, including me, and we get contributions from hundreds of other Mac admins who have extended the script with things that I just wouldn't have thought of myself and couldn't have provided myself, which is pretty amazing. The principle of Installamator is we move this entire installation process onto the client. We don't have any preparation before. We have this shell script. Installamator is a shell script that lives in your management system, in this case, Jamf. It works with other management systems as well. And the management system pushes out this shell script with the instructions, let's say, install Google Chrome. And Installamator knows how to download Google Chrome from the vendor's website, from Google, and what steps are necessary to install it. Installamator will work with DMG archives, zip archives, some other archive formats, and if the vendor provides a PKG installer already, then yes, Installamator will use that too. So this way, you skip the entire preparation phase because the script does the work on the client. It's pretty much as if you told a user to go to Google and download and install Google Chrome. We don't want to do that as Mac admins, obviously, but the script follows that workflow. As of now, there are more than 400 applications that Installamator knows how to download and install. Again, I didn't provide most of those. They come from the community and are also vetted by the community. It uses HTTPS downloads for certification or verification of the download, and it also uses Gatekeeper to verify the download. Because when we download stuff from the internet and then install it on the system, we really want to be certain that it's not downloading something wrong, that there wasn't somebody who hijacked the developer's website or your local DNS or your proxy, or somehow is able to inject something into that download that isn't what we want to install. We really want to make sure that that verification works. And the great thing is Apple provides this and provides this functionality with Gatekeeper. So we're just using that. We're using Gatekeeper in a way, though, that the user doesn't get these scary dialogues that something might be dangerous. We run it in the background through command line tools. But anything we download has to be notarized and signed and pass the Gatekeeper verification. And we go one step further even than Apple does. We pull out the developer ID and actually check if it matches the developer ID that we expect it to be. So we can be sure that this was signed and notarized by Microsoft or by Google. And if that changes, which happens when software gets hacked, then Installamator will reject it and not install it. So there's an extra step that we do in here. So Installamator can help. The downside of Installamator is you get the latest version of the software. You have no control about this. It's just go out there, get the latest version of the software, install it. If you need version control for your workflows for security reasons or compatibility reasons, you need to go back to either the manual workflow or auto package allows you to do that, because even though when you run auto package, you will also get the latest version of a given software. But with auto package, you build this archive of old versions of the software. So you can tell Jamf or your management system to use an older one on a certain set of machines or on all of your machines because you need to lock the version. Installamator doesn't give you that because you're not handling the packages. Installamator goes out to the vendor, grabs the latest version. If you're using cloud software, for example, Slack, which is actually just a very smart client that connects to a web service, then this is fine. You need to be on the latest version anyway, but for certain other software, this might be a challenge. And you can mix and match. You can use auto package where it's useful for you. You can use Installamator where it's useful for you. You can use manual installation where it's useful for you. You don't have to go one way for everything. There is a new thing here that Jamf introduced last year at the JNUC in the fall, and it has been available in preview since earlier this year. And it is still in preview, so we know we're not quite ready with this feature yet, but I think it is very interesting to go forward. It's called the Jamf App Catalog, or sometimes the Jamf App Installers. And the notion here behind this is all this work that we need in preparation to prepare a package to go into Jamf. Well, what if Jamf did all that work for you and you didn't have to worry about that? So Jamf downloads from the vendor, repackages when necessary, and provides the package directly to Jamf. And then Jamf pushes that out. And one of the things that is also new about the Jamf App Catalog is we're not even using the Jamf agent that lives on your client. We're actually using the install enterprise application MDM command in the hope of, I guess, future-proofing Jamf in this thing, and send it out to the client to install the software. So basically all the preparation is done by Jamf, and you get the simpler lifecycle app management. You don't have to worry about that. The app installers are provided by Jamf, and they're streamlined for this kind of application installation, so they work. And you can combine this with the patch management feed that I had earlier, so you know which clients have the latest versions and which don't have the update yet. if for some reason the download failed or the client just has been sleeping for a few weeks or sitting on a shelf somewhere. There are currently about 90 apps in the app installer catalog. So it's a subset of what I mentioned earlier, which is the patch-menejment catalog, where we have close to 1,000. Right now, we only have about 90 in the Jamf app catalog, but there are some big ones in there. Google Chrome is in there, but some software from Adobe as well, which is very helpful because anybody who needs to manage Adobe knows what a pain that can be. And some very common third-party apps are in there. You can find a list online. I will give links for everything I mentioned later at the end of the presentation. Yeah, once you have enabled or chosen something from the Jamf app catalog, as I said, right now there's about 90 apps. Basically, all you get to do is you can assign it to a category and you give it a target group. You can use a Jamf Smart Group or Static Group as your target. That's your scope, and then it will be pushed out. It usually only takes a few minutes for it to be pushed out to the clients, assuming the client is online. Once a client goes online, it should check in with Jamf and receive the update. So yeah, there's a step 3. You choose your app, you choose your scope, and you enable it, and then it just goes out and does it. It is available on the Jamf Pro cloud. It is not available for on-premise Jamf installations right now. It is in preview, so test it, but maybe don't rely on it yet. But once after testing, you know this already works for you. That's awesome. If it doesn't work for you, please provide feedback so we can update and change it. And Jamf is aware that there are some features that might still be desirable. It's very basic right now, but that's why we call it a preview. I think it is very exciting. I think this is very interesting going forward. Towards the end now, I'd like to talk about macOS updates. So far we've talked about third-party apps running on macOS, but of course at some point we want to update or upgrade macOS itself. And I'd like to talk a bit about the terminology first. Updates are minor updates going from 11.4 to 11.5 or from 11.5 to 11.5.1 because there's been a security update. Those are updates. You stay within the main major version number. But of course, we also want to manage to go from 11 to 12, or when the fall comes, from 12 to 13. Those are usually called upgrades or major updates, just to distinguish between those. And the major updates, the upgrades between the major versions require a different workflow. They also require a bit more patience from the users because they usually take much longer. There's one thing I'd like to point out, which is really cute. This is kind of a flashback to older versions of macOS. I wanted to say 20 years ago when I was preparing this, but then I realized this is macOS 8, and it's probably closer to 25 years ago. There is an amazing website. It's called macOS8.app, which gives you a full-blown Mac emulation for macOS 8 back in the days. And as you saw, like the boot process and the update process was really fast. Check out this website. If you're like me, experienced those times, this is an awesome flashback. And it actually comes with some software in the emulation in your browser that allows you to actually use this virtual macOS 8 machine. I really think it's very, very awesome. And if you didn't experience those times, it might be an interesting experience on how computers and particularly Macs worked back then. It also has a sister site called system7.app, which is even older. Goes back even further to the previous. The point, except from reminiscing about the past, which is always kind of fun, is back then updates were fairly straightforward because there was really very little security on the system. Nowadays, when we play in updates to macOS, Apple has made the process fairly tedious. The reason is they've locked down the system with the sealed system volume. The system volume is read-only and signed cryptographically, so that even if somebody could bypass the read-only system volume and try to make changes to the system, the cryptographic lock would break and the system would say, hey, something is going on here. I don't want to boot off that. And that makes the update process slower and more complicated. And then on Apple Silicon, Apple decided they need user approval for an update. So any update, the user needs to enter their password to actually confirm and say, yes, I want to run the update now. This is somewhat required to unlock the encrypted disk. And we can kind of work around that with MDM commands and the secure boot open in your management system. But the entire process is changing, and it's changing in a way that it's also hard for the management system providers to keep up and provide a good workflow. But that's what we want. I mean, if the workflow isn't good, then the users won't update because they get the dialogue that there's an update available, but they say, well, I have a presentation in 5 minutes, or I need to work now. I don't want to do the update. They dismiss the dialogue, and then later they forget, and the update is never put in. And we all know that we do that on our phones and on our personal machines as well. So there are tools that help us with that. And again, these are open source tools that people have built for their own use in their own organization and then provided for everyone. And the community has also fed back. The first one I want to point out, because it's the older one, is Nudge, here on the right side, written by Eric Gomez. It's basically a notification tool. It figures out, oh, look, there's an update available on this Mac, and it gives explanations to the user, very detailed explanations. You want to do this. You as the Mac admin can configure Nudge on how often the user can defer this and how long they can defer this. And then when the user clicks on update devices, they will be taken to the software update pane where they can go through the normal process, because that's the easiest way, actually. Nudge is nice. It's, as the name implies, polite and holds back a bit and not very aggressive about this, but it is very useful because it gives more information, background, and a bit more guidance than just the macOS notification. Another tool written by Kevin White is called Superman. It's an abbreviation for something, and I forget what it is, but you will see on the repo, and I will provide the links later, that it's an abbreviation for something, and that is a bit more aggressive in what it does, but it's basically the same principle. It shows a dialogue. It gives the user a configurable time to defer and a good configurable number of deferrals. And then if those are out, both the time and the number of deferrals, then pretty much the defer button will go away, and it's only like, yes, do the update now, restart. That communicates with Jamf to use the MDM commands to actually enforce the update. So that's very interesting. It's a bit more aggressive than Nudge. Great tools, open source, available. I would recommend looking at those. These are for updates. If you want to do upgrades for major, you actually have to download the big whopping install macOS Monterey or macOS Ventura in the fall app, which requires a bit more of a workflow. There is also an amazing script for this written by Graham Pugh. It's called Erase Install. The name is very misleading here. Erase Install was the original task that Graham wrote the script for, but it does do non-destructive updates and upgrades as well. It is not the most efficient tool for updates, the minor updates, because the script will always download the full 10 to 12, 13 gigabyte sized macOS installer before it performs its task. That's the way it works. Whereas if you do the minor updates through the system preferences pane, you will get a delta. The download sizes will be much smaller. They will still be 1 to 2 gigabytes, depending on which update we're looking at, but they will be much smaller. So This might not be efficient for updates unless you're running into some other problems, but for upgrades, going from major macOS versions to the later one, this is a wonderful tool. And don't be scared by the name. You don't have to do an erase install, though that is also a useful workflow if you need it. So it will guide the user. It actually uses dep-notify or something like dep-notify for the UI. There will be a progress bar. There will be one more warning. Are you sure you want to erase all your stuff? If the erasure is enabled, or there will be a warning and say, are you sure you want to run the upgrade? This will block your computer for 30 minutes or something like that. And then it will start the process. The screen will remain locked during the start of the process. And of course, at some point, the macOS installation process, the black screen with a white apple and the interminable progress bar will take over. And check out the erase install script. Very useful for these kinds of things. Aside from wonderful conferences like these, where people present these solutions to you and suggest, hey, these are useful, how would you find them? And I have a few recommendations for that as well. First of all, there is Jamf Nation, which is a community online discussion board. They have more than 100,000 Jamf Nation members. It is the largest Mac admin community online. There's discussions going on. You can search the archives, of course. You probably will find answers to many questions without having to post them. Or if you can't find an answer, then you can post them and there will probably be discussion going on and helping you. Jamf Nation, great online community, check it out. In the fall, September 27 through 29, please check the dates, I'm not sure I'm right about this, will be the Jamf Nation User Conference, or short JNUC. This year, it will be held as a hybrid event. So there will be an in-person conference in San Diego, California, but all of the sessions will also be made available online immediately or shortly after the presentation for hybrid participants. And then a few weeks after the conference, all of the sessions will be made available online on YouTube. So the live online and the live in-person participation comes with a charge. And then after a few weeks, you will get the sessions for free on YouTube. That also means that you can get last year's and the year before that, and I think it goes back 4 or 5 years, a session online on YouTube right now, which is an awesome archive of knowledge and information. Kind of if you know what you're looking for, but it's worth checking out. So Jamf Nation User Conference this year in September, I will be presenting. I'm looking forward to that. But I'm not the only one there. It's literally hundreds of sessions at Jamf Nation User Conference. Another thing online is the Jamf Marketplace. It's a website, or sub-website of Jamf. And that's where open source projects and third-party providers can put up solutions to work with Jamf. Some of them are consultants, some of them are commercial and paid for, some of them are open source and free as in beer and free as in speech. Most of these use the Jamf APIs to communicate with Jamf in some way. Installamator is on there as well, just as an example. It's also a great place. If you're looking for a certain solution, something you say, oh, I wish Jamf did that, maybe check out the Jamf Marketplace. There might be an add-on, a open source project, or maybe a commercial solution that ties into Jamf and provides what you're missing. It's a great ecosystem. Jamf isn't just a management system. There's a platform around it that ties into many solutions. There is the Mac Admin Slack, which has recently kind of come out. It's always been like the macadmins.org without the .ua, has run the Slack. Recently, it's kind of reformed, and the Mac Admins Foundation, it's a US nonprofit organization, has come out, and they're working with Apple to provide the new Apple certifications for people who can't afford to get them through their employer. Check out their website, macadmins.org. The most straightforward thing you can do, though, is join the Mac admins Slack, which is a huge Slack instance. They have more than 5,000 weekly active users, more than 40,000 registered users, and there's more than 1,000 channels on all topics Mac admin. And of course, there are many technical and professional topics, which is a great help if you want support, help, advice, or just, discuss and share in the misery that we're sometimes all in. Awesome channels for that, but there's also some fun channels that are more recreative. It's a great community. I'm active there as Scripting OS 10, Scripting OS X, as well as about 5,000 other people every week. I can very much recommend joining there. And then we're back to the shameless self-promotion. I provide a weekly news summary. You can go to my website, scriptingos10.com. You can read the weekly news summary online. You can have it through the RSS feed. You can follow me on Twitter, scriptingos10, or most other social medias, or you can sign up by email for the weekly newsletter, which many people do. I'm actually really happy about that. And I try to put together a list of links to posts from other Mac admins or from companies, not just Jamf, but all the relevant companies for Mac admins about what happened this week, focused on the Mac admin or Apple admin, because we manage iOS devices too, space. With that, thank you very much for having me. Yuri, thank you very much for setting this up. I think this is amazing. I said earlier, I'm sometimes involved in the Dutch Mac admins meetings and sometimes get invited to others. I'm always happy to help out when I can. My name is Armін Brігель. This QR code will take you to a GitHub repo that my coworker Rob Potvin put together with links to these slides. I also put the URL below. I know we have time for Q&A. I'm really looking forward to that. If you want to ask in Ukrainian, Yuri has volunteered to translate for me, because other than stammering the first sentence, sorry, I don't speak Ukrainian. So I'm looking forward to your questions.
Armin, thank you for your session. This is kind of concentrated knowledge on patch management. I very appreciate your time and help for our community. So the questions, they was partly or mostly covered in your session. One of these is Installometer was an original independent script and later become part of Jamf patch management system. And you, as a project owner, already explained the status of this project. And
yeah. Let me elaborate a bit on that. I think that's a fair question. The Installometer script is something I started before I worked at Jamf, and it is still independent of Jamf. What is now the Jamf app installer is actually, and I have greatest admiration for this person. I don't know if you follow that, but Duncan McCracken used to have a company called Mondada, which provided a service for companies to do all the package preparation. And Jamf bought them, I think, in 2020. Oh, please don't judge me on the date. And Duncan had been working on the new app installer thing. That was something that happened entirely independently of Installometer. And it is different because Installometer goes out to the third-party vendor and downloads the software from the third-party vendor. Whereas the Jamf app installer, there are people at Jamf, or actually automated systems at Jamf, that do the work, create a package, and that is the package that you get installed. So there's a very different approach here. Installometer is independent of Jamf. I'm still kind of the project lead, but I'm not the only project maintainer. And Installometer works with systems other than Jamf. We have people using it with Mosile, Workspace ONE, I think some people with Intune. So yes, they are separate.
Great. Thank you. And next question is, also, it was also partly or mostly covered in your presentation. In order to be in line with ISO recommendations on every update, you need to check whether this update is safe or will not break your and your employees' work. How are you handling this?
So specifically for Installamator, we aren't. And if you need this kind of ISO restriction, don't use Installamator. You can use the Jamf app installers are verified by Jamf in the form that we also check the signature, and we check for malware, and we check that the software works. But you know yourself how it is. The only thing we really can check is, well, it launches. If you need and I mentioned it in the slides earlier, but if you need a version lock or a more stringent version control system, you have to use either manual repackaging or repackage with auto package, because there you can configure Jamf and tighter version controls on the system. Jamf Pro allows you to say, install this version on the computers, even if there is a newer one. So the question is, how do I get the different packages in there? And then auto packages is the answer.
Okay, thank you. And next question, can Installamator use Homebrew database for updates?
No, Homebrew is a separate system. Homebrew is a system that is really designed to run on an individual's person and that individual's machine, and that individual needs admin rights and so many design choice. And I don't want to diss Homebrew too much, because I know it's a super useful tool for these use cases. But Homebrew and management, there's so many design choices in Homebrew that make it unsuitable for management. So Installamator and Homebrew are independent, and I would not recommend trying to use Homebrew in a management style, to use it to install something on hundreds of machines. It's really good at what it does, that a single person on a single machine can use Homebrew. It's not good for management. My personal opinion here.
Thank you. And the question from Tim, I'm already sure you use their product. So they're asking, I already tried Jamf App Catalog and can't wait for its release. However, it lacks options to distribute apps using self-service. Are there any plans to add this feature, and what is the expected timeline for this?
I can't talk to the timeline. I can say that we are aware of this request, very, very much so. As I said earlier, the Jamf Native User Conference is in September, so I can honestly say I don't know anything, but I expect we will get some updates there. Yes, for now, please provide feedback to Jamf about this. But this is something we've heard a lot, and I am very much aware of that many people want this, and I do too.
Okay, thank you, Armin. And the question from the speaker of first MacAdmins UA conference. Do you have some best practices for testing macOS updates before applying for the whole company? What should we test and how?
Oh, those are excellent questions. The first one is actually, don't wait until the update is out. Sign up for Apple Seed for IT, which you can and get for free from Apple if you have an Apple Business Manager or Apple School Manager account. And now I am totally embarrassed that I didn't check if the Ukraine has access to ABM or Apple School Manager.
We have, yeah.
Perfect. So that means you can start testing updates before they are available to your users. You should start updating with the betas. You should start testing. I usually recommend the first level of testing should be on virtual machines. There are some amazing applications, Parallel, VMware, UTM is open source and available for Apple Silicon. There was another one, Virtual Buddy, that was just released last week, which I think looks interesting. It's a great first level of testing. There are many limitations on how you can test on virtual machines. Like if I have VMware or Parallels on Intel, I can actually give that virtual machine a serial number from a real Mac, and then I can actually test automated deployment workflows, which is awesome. That doesn't work on Apple Silicon, which is really annoying. At least it doesn't work yet. I hope that Apple is hearing us here, that we would like that. So first level is virtual machines, but you have to test on hardware. Definitely start testing during the beta phase for major and minor updates. It just gives you more time to find problems. And then again, test when the release is there, because Apple changes things until last minutes. And then when you do the rollout, I recommend having some sort of, you have a subgroup of users that that can deal with problems that might arise. So that's your first group. And then maybe you have one or two more groups before you roll it out to everyone, just to make sure you can do that. Apple allows you to hold back updates for up to 90 days with a configuration profile. I definitely recommend implementing that, maybe not the full 90 days, but at least a week or up to 30 days. Your organization will have policies on that. And if not, think about it. So you get that time for testing, but also, again, use the Apple Seed for IT to extend your time for testing.
Okay, thank you. And I think it's the last question for today's session. Can X protect and gatekeeper mark as untrusted scripts like the installer?
So you can, gatekeeper, we're just using their functionality. Gatekeeper has certain criteria, mostly what the user sees when you download something and it says, oh, this isn't signed, this isn't notarized. Are you really sure you want to use this? It mostly looks at the signature, which should be an Apple Developer ID signature, and the notarization, which is an extra stamp on top of that the developer gets for each version of the software. That's what Installer looks at, and that's what Gatekeeper looks at. Gatekeeper will also, Gatekeeper itself, but the process of the system checking a download will involve XProtect and look for malware as well, which means that if something was recognized by Apple and thus XProtect later as being malware, Gatekeeper should also catch it. So we get that because we just use the spctl command line tool, which invokes Gatekeeper from Installer. We get all of that. There's no special magic that Installer does, except for that extra step that we say the script knows, like Microsoft has this developer ID number, it's a 10-digit alphanumeric code. So if we download something from Microsoft, check if it is this number, and otherwise say, oh, well, something went wrong. So that's the one extra step we do with Installer.
Okay. So if I'm an administrator and I'm in charge of a certain fleet, 50 or more Macs, it's better to me to register as an Apple developer to have these sign-in options for my scripts, correct?
Oh, that is an excellent question. It's not that easy. So if you distribute scripts or your own built packages because you're repackaging something through Jamf and most other management systems, they do not need to be signed, because the installation process that Jamf uses, and again, most other management systems, not all, bypasses Gatekeeper entirely. So we bypass the Gatekeeper check because the management system runs as root, and Apple says, once you have gained that privilege, we don't do extra checks. if you provide software, if you build and provide software, whether that's scripts or full-blown binaries that the user installs manually, then you need to sign and you need to notarize. Otherwise, you will get all kinds of warnings, and you really want to avoid those. And then you need the developer ID from Apple, so that you get that with either the paid for individual developer contract, the $99 euros a year, or with the enterprise contract, developer contract, which is slightly more expensive, but gives you more flexibility in how you get and use those certificates. But for normal Mac admin purposes, if you're just repackaging Firefox, bad example because they provide a signed and notarized package. But if you're repackaging something that doesn't come as a signed and notarized package, you probably don't need to sign and notarize it. And the same for your scripts that you push through the management system. The management system should bypass Gatekeeper and take care of all of that.
Okay, thank you, Armin. And also, you didn't tell anything about your books. Could you please, in words?
I have written books in the past. The latest one is macOS Terminal and Shell, which gives you the basics if you're not familiar with Terminal. If you're scared of Terminal on macOS, that book should help you along. Or maybe if you're kind of a bit familiar with Terminal and you're coming from a different platform, macOS has many special things. Some of them are really strange, some of them are really great. That book should help you along with that too. I have an older book that is for people who are already comfortable with Terminal, but have avoided moving to Z Shell, which is the new default shell on macOS, and are holding on to Bash for dear life. It's called Moving to Z Shell. The third book that I still have published is Packaging, which explains how to build packages, mostly from scratch, which we sometimes have to do as administrators. I have 2 more books, but they're really old, and I honestly don't recommend buying them anymore. Yes, I do hope they're helpful. I'm working on more books in the future, but work has been crazy like everyone, and unfortunately I really don't make as much progress on the books as I'd like to right now.
So Armin, thanks a lot. Huge дякую from all local admins community. Thank you for your time and thank you for your support. We very appreciate your work and we'll follow you on your website. Thanks a lot.
Thank
Armin.
you. Thank you for having me. I'm really glad to be here. Dakiyu, Slava Ukraini. I'm glad to be here, and I hope that sometime I can actually come to Kiev and meet you all.
I'm looking forward to this. Thank you, Armin.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Дякуємо Арміну за те, що приєднався сьогодні і розпочав нашу конференцію.